Alright guys, the cheapest way to get cinematic B-roll, okay? You might have heard of this. Oh, by the way, we camera talking today. Okay, anyway. You might have heard of this term, golden hour. Credit to all the videos I've watched on YouTube where people have talked about golden hour, because until they said it, I might not have really thought about it much. But just think sunset and those vibes. So golden hour, as far as I understand, as far as I remember, it's that hour right before the sun goes down. It's looking nice, good vibe. Shoot during that time. I think that golden hour is considered to be the first hour of the sun rising and the first hour or the last hour of the sun setting. I think that those are the two golden hour opportunities, as far as I understand. I could be wrong, but I think that that's how it works. Anyway, shoot during golden hour, your photos and videos if you can. Beyond that, I'm trying to think of a way to say this that isn't just the same way that other people have said it, but essentially, contrast is a thing that we seem to like or think looks good or is interesting or whatever. Contrast, right? So right now, there's a lot of contrast between this bright side of my face and the dark side of my face. That's a lot of contrast, right? It's not just all kind of this more even looking grayed out or desaturated looking thing. It's like lots of contrast, bright, dark, etc. Okay, when you're filming something, try to film on the shadowy side, right? So if I'm filming on this side, it might look like the lighting is kind of just meh, right? Whereas if you shoot on this side and there's lots of shadow and the lights on the other side are at I believe Rembrandt lighting is a 45-degree angle, so it'd be kind of like this or whatever. It's not really great here, but it's like, Rembrandt lighting is when you have that triangle of light on the cheek, I believe. And so essentially, like, as far as I've heard, you'd want to shoot where, like, you got the camera there and then the light is like 45 degrees off to the side. Credit to all the people that told me about that. All of those people, credit to them. Anyway, so like, try to shoot at least like somewhat on the shadow side of the subject, right? That's probably going to make it look more cinematic. This term might get thrown around a lot. Again, also, so here's the thing. You might hear people talk about blurry backgrounds as being a cinematic thing, and it's funny because you can get into a little bit of a debate on this, because you look at some of these older movies or whatever, there might be some shots that don't have much of a background blur, but maybe people still think it looks cinematic. So is it really about the background blur, or is that just kind of more of a modern thing that maybe we obsess about? Is there such thing as too much background blur, or too often of background blur? You could argue maybe yes. Maybe people would argue no. Regardless, blurry background, having a lens that has a small f-stop number. I'm saying it that way, I think pretty intentionally, because people might talk about high aperture and say, what's high aperture mean? Does that mean the number's higher or whatever? I'm just going to say it like this, because I think high aperture means a low aperture number. I'm pretty sure that that's how to interpret it properly, but how I'm going to say it is the lower the number beside the little f, the little lowercase f on the lens, the lower that number, the more easy it is to get the blurry background, okay? If that's what you want, look for a lens that has the small number beside the little f with the slash or whatever, okay? Blurry background, small f-stop number, okay? Aperture. Make that aperture number small. Anyway, moving on. Beyond that, you could argue color grading, right? Making your videos more cinematic. All of these things don't have to be expensive. If you have a subscription to any kind of video editing software, there might be some level of color grading ability or functions in it, right? So essentially, like, whether you're adding contrast or you're making the blacks blacker, or maybe you're making the highlights a bit more punchy, or whatever, or maybe you're saturating the colors, or maybe you're making a certain color more saturated, or whatever. Like, there's these different things in the color grade. If you look at color grading tutorials, you can maybe figure out ways to make it look more cinematic. If you have LUTs that you've purchased or that are good for commercial use or whatever, depending on if you're doing things commercially, then adding a LUT to something basically makes it a certain kind of color scheme. That might make it look more cinematic, right? Stuff like that. It's worth considering. In terms of the lens, by the way, if you're getting a lens that has a small f-stop number, right, so that aperture number is really small number, more blurry background, the smaller that f-stop number gets on a lens in terms of what it's able to go to on the low end, or maybe is the term the high end. Anyway, the smaller that number gets, the more expensive the lens tends to be. But a good example of a lens that is not too expensive by camera standards is that Canon 50mm f1.8. If you get that lens, slap it on a camera, and I think it has macro ability, so you can get really close to the subject, get that blurry background on a budget, right? Of course, you got to have a camera that, you know, will adapt to EF, or a camera that has an EF mount. Anyway, moving forward, you could look at that lens on the cheap, on eBay, whatever, do that stuff. Beyond that, essentially, what else? You're gonna... This is basically the kind of stuff. When it comes to making something cinematic, some of it could just be the motion, right? So how you move the camera. Cinematic might not be like, you know, shaky camera, right? You might want to, instead of having the camera all shaky, you might want to try to stabilize that shot. The slow panning movements, things like that. You could put it on a tripod, put it on a gimbal, stuff like that. Again, and it could even just be a static shot, but maybe there's things that are happening in the image. How you frame it. So if you use the rule of thirds, what is the rule of thirds? Split the screen into thirds like this and like this, right? So you, right now, this is in the top right third intersecting point. For some reason, it seems that, for whatever reason, we like this kind of composition often. We don't necessarily always use this kind of composition, but if you want just an easy framework to start from, look up the rule of thirds, maybe try to position things in your framing of what you're shooting to be like that, position that way using the rule of thirds. You might find it gives a bit more of a look that you like, or that's more appealing or pleasing or whatever. These are just a few things. Anyway, I'll end it there. There's probably more things that you could do to make your B-roll more cinematic, or really any footage. This is more, this you could say is just for any kind of footage. Another thing is your sound design. If you have like sound design, that can make stuff more cinematic, probably, depending on how you do it. But anyway, this works for B-roll. This probably also works for other stuff, but it depends on what you're doing. So if you have any more questions, or if you have any questions about cameras, please join my Skool Community, link in description. I'm running a 7-day free trial right now. So please consider joining the community, ask the question. I'm going to try to answer it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.